to say what you want, to meet whom you want, and to express yourself the way you want has always been for me like the defining characteristic of a democracy.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for yet another episode of the First Amendment Museum's one-on-one interview series. Today, I'm joined by a, dare I say, very cool guest, Nell McShane Wulfhart. Nell, if you want to take a moment to introduce yourself.
Well, I am very cool. Thank you for that. Yeah, my name is Nell, and I am a travel journalist turned author, and we're here to talk about my book, which just came out in April, The Great Stewardess Rebellion.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So why do you think the First Amendment is important, and what do you think its purpose is?
Actually, the First Amendment has always been my favorite amendment of all the amendments. And I just think it's like the essential part of living in a free and fair society, is that the ability to say what you want, to meet whom you want, and to express yourself the way you want has always been for me like the defining characteristic of a democracy.
I couldn't agree more. So you are the author of The Great Stewardess Rebellion, How Women Launched a Workplace Revolution at 30,000 Feet. What is this about, and what is the Great Stewardess Rebellion? I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, it's sort of a bit of history that's remained mostly untold until now. And it's about a group of stewardesses who back in the 1960s and 70s managed, through the power of the feminist movement and the labor movement, to create huge change in the most sexist workplace in America, the airline cabin. And it's how those changes managed to create real workplace rights and changes for all American working women. Essentially, when we think about the golden age of travel, in the 1960s, we think about Don Draper, we think about roast beef in first class and cocktails and this very glamorous lifestyle, and a slim, smiling stewardess and an impeccable uniform, that sort of thing. But the reality is that the actual working conditions of the job for those women were terrible. They were really underpaid. They had to step on a scale before they got on the plane. And if they'd gained a few pounds, they would lose their jobs. They weren't allowed to wear glasses or have braces or even things like acne. There were girdle checks that anybody, any supervisor, any pilot could conduct, which basically mean like a flick on the butt to make sure you're wearing your girdle. And of course, they were fired if they got married, they were fired if they had kids, and if they managed to avoid both of those things, they were forced to retire at the age of 32. So my book is about the women who changed all of those things bit by bit, and how they managed to establish, workplace rights for all women.
So what inspired you to write about the Great Stewardess Rebellion, and how did you even hear about this story?
I used to have a column in the New York Times travel section where I interviewed celebrities about what they took in their carry-on luggage. So fluffy, but super fun. And one of the people I interviewed was Adam Conover, who had a TV show of his own. He'd done an episode on this, and he was telling me the story of these women and the things that they had done. And I said, that sounds like it would make a great book. And then I sort of scurried off and wrote it. And it appealed to me because it's about how they really channeled the spirit of the 60s and 70s, how they used the advantages that the women's movement gave them and this new awareness of the world, and how they also used the tricks and tips and abilities and power of the labor movement to exercise these changes. And I'm very interested in both feminism and labor. Plus, it had stewardesses in it, and I think everyone is a little bit beguiled by the idea of a stewardess, especially from the 60s or 70s. It's a really captivating idea and image and concept.
So how did the stewardesses use their First Amendment freedoms to achieve their goals?
So one of the main ways that they did that was through the power of protest. And basically when they were pushing back against all these airline regulations, and the airlines were fighting these changes tooth and nail. They did not want to allow these women to age on the job. They did not want to allow them to marry. They did not want to allow them to become mothers. They definitely didn't want to allow them to gain 5 or 10 pounds as they got older. So the airlines were absolutely doing everything they can in court, in meetings at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, in the popular press to push back against these changes that the women wanted to make. But the women were protesting. They were out there with picket signs. They were, running boycotts. They were running counter commercials. They were writing letters. And if you've ever seen you can see this even today at the airlines when the pilots go on strike or flight attendants, start picketing, like they're out there with their signs at the airport, making a pretty compelling case for themselves. And so, through the power of assembly, through labor movements, through actual labor change and labor action, and also just the power of capturing headlines and writing to newspapers. The idea back in the 1960s and 70s of like stewardesses who were really mad was like catnip to newspaper editors, and they managed to get a tremendous amount of press.
Yeah, interesting. I can't wait to read this book because this is like all new stuff to me. So, and I read a lot about the First Amendment, and frankly, I need something new to read that's not a litany of Supreme Court cases.
This is a lot of it's a story of like worker power, but it's also a story of these characters, real women who drove the whole thing. And it has a lot of great pictures of amazing ads from the 60s and 70s, extremely sexist, but also funny ones, and also ludicrous uniforms that I think helped to leaven it a little bit.
Yeah. So how do you utilize the First Amendment in your everyday life beyond just your book writing?
Yeah, this is something I think about a lot. I'm currently based in Uruguay. I'm not in the States anymore, so I'm not out at protests or demonstrations as much as I used to be, although I attend some here. But when I lived in the States, I certainly went to plenty of those. And I think that is like the most direct and maybe obvious demonstration of exercising my First Amendment rights, and that it's something I worry about a lot. I mean, I feel that there's an increasing tendency to crack down on those sorts of things. My sister was at a Black Lives Matter protest, a year ago, and she was arrested, literally just for exercising her First Amendment rights and protesting and, marching with people. So I feel like there's definitely a crackdown happening on those particular expressions. So that's one of the things that keeps me up at night, I guess.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Do you have anything you want to promote? Any way people can get the book? Any way they can learn more? Anything you want to promote? Now is your open mic moment.
I think the paperback version of The Great Stewardess Rebellion will be out in March or April 2023, if that's when you're watching. And you can get it anywhere you buy books. And you can find me at my website, nellmcshanewulfhart.com.
Well, Nell, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the invitation. This is fun to do.